Hey, HTDA, and welcome back to Distant Worlds 2. Today we are going to take our fleet management to the next level. But before we do that, let's do a quick recap on where we are. So this nice little blue area on the top here is our empire. We conquered our green neighbor that was in the back. And now the real question is, where do we go next? So, of course, we are going to conquer the galaxy, and that's an easy way to win the game. We're actually not doing that bad. I mean, considering, we are one of the larger empires. There are a couple of ones that seem to be large, but it also is perspective. If you flip this around, you can actually see that my area looks bigger than theirs, etc. So, in terms of size, we're doing really well. In terms of colonies, I actually think we're already way ahead. Simply because we have a lot of small colonies, and those small colonies will grow into bigger ones, of course. In terms of score, we're doing really well. We're not the top player just yet, but we are closing in on the Farlinar conformity, which is, I believe, still this system here on the side. Let me check to double check. Yeah, so this is our main competitor at the moment, but that's not really in a position that we really want to deal with them. They are getting closer to, they're expanding in our direction, so we'll have to deal with them sooner or later, but for now, they're kind of by themselves behind all of these nebulas, so we can't leave them alone. The real question then is, who are we going to target next? Now, there's a couple of ways to go, and I think we're actually going to take on two different enemies at the same time, or at least fairly close in succession to each other. However, in order to do that, we really need to reorganize how we run our military, and that's where the fleet management comes in. We have a lot of empires now scattering around the universe, trying to just claim whatever they can. And you can see that happening around us as well. So we have all these pink blobs over here. We have these, what is this? Teal or whatever, greenish, I don't know. To be honest, I would really prefer it if in some update they make these colors a little bit more neon difference instead of pink, slightly different shade of pink slash purple, etc. Because right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pinkish empires in the world, and we have several blue, teal, whatever this is, ones. Really not clear, guys. So you could just make it like red, yellow, pink, blue, but make the shades a little bit more standing out from each other. Anyway, I digress. So we have these pink little blobs. We also have these blobs. We're going to leave this empire alone. Why? Because this empire, even though it is our neighbor, it would be really annoying to try to kind of invade them because they are in between all these others. So what we're actually going to do, we are going to take out some of these pink colonies. Now, it's a little bit hard to tell, like I just said, which colonies belong to which empires, but actually, these three colonies in the back here, they belong to this empire in the back here. So that means that there's an entire different empire between us. Now, what I want to do in terms of our fleet manage, I want to have a couple of smaller agile fleets that are able to really quickly take out these smaller colonies, while we make sure we defend our backs, because if we don't do that, we're going to have a problem. So we're going to need to defend the, let's call this the west side of our empire. And as soon as we take out these colonies, we are going to defend these colonies at first. And then we're going to declare war on this galaxy, or this empire, I should say. Take this one out. And then, if possible, and if we don't have too many losses, actually push all the way through and take out these main colonies here as well. Now, that is quite ambitious, and like I said, that will require us to do some fleet management. So let me set up a few things, and then we're going to talk about how exactly we're going to do that. Alright, so fleet management. Remember all those nice defense fleets and stuff that we made? Yep, I disbanded all of them. Yep, all of the fleets are now disbanded. Instead, what we're going to do, we are going to use the fleet templates over here. Now, there's always a couple of them active by default, and you cannot delete a couple of them either, so you also have to kind of keep these default ones around. But what you can do is that you can edit them and kind of shape them in terms of what you want. So what we're going to do is we are going to edit a couple of things. I am actually no longer going to distinguish between attack fleets and invasion fleets, because as you have noticed, what we have been doing is kind of sending our attack fleet, having our invasion fleet just waiting around, and then when the attack fleet is done, the invasion fleet moves in and starts taking out the colonies. Now that kind of makes sense because initially I had the invasion fleets being kind of troop transports, and initially the troop transports are a little bit fragile ships, but really, to be honest, quite quickly those troop transports themselves turn into pretty formidable enemies. Ships, they can take care of themselves. You have guns on them, you have shields, armor, etc. So it's not like they're just going to get shot out of the sky as soon as they encounter a couple of enemies, especially not when they are guided by your destroyers and stuff like that. And in addition to that, you can actually use those troop transports in combat, and especially in the way that we designed them anyway, you can use them to capture enemy ships. So you might as well send them around with your main attack fleet in order to capture whatever ships you encounter. Now, keeping that in mind, what we're going to do, we are going to edit this, and then there's a couple of things that we need to do. So we need to set the the role, but we can't do that because we only have one attack fleet. We can do this. So what we're going to do this is we are going to call this a major attack fleet. There's going to be a reason for that. Actually, no, let's just call this the attack fleet. Wait, that's fine, actually. Let's just call it like that. Okay. Engagement range doesn't really matter, but I'm actually going to set this a little bit closer. So same location, same system, sector range. What are we going to pick? Let's say same system. That will keep them really close together. No, actually, let's use sector range. That seems fine. Okay. Retreat is fine. Attack stance is definitely going to have to be aggressive, and everything else is just fine. We can have this be fine as well. To be honest, all these default settings are relatively okay. But the real nice thing about what you can do is you can actually set how many ships of which type are going to be in this specific type of fleet. Now we're actually going to set everything to 0 for a moment, just so I don't get confused. As you can see, it's actually trying to kind of do a little bit of everything. To be honest, we might actually end up doing something very similar, but anyway. We are going to have at least a couple of destroyers in here. With our major attack fleet, we are going to have definitely a lot of frigates in here. We are probably going to try and have at least one or two, let's say 2 cruisers and 1 battleship in here, maybe 1 carrier as well. And then we are going to have, let's say, 5 troop transports. Now, it's always going to have the latest active design, so as long as we make sure we always update these things. Right now, we actually have that set to automatic. This will just try to make a fleet consisting out of these ships whenever we can. Now, I'm actually going to add a couple of fuel tankers to this as well, because we have a ton of those by now. And not because we built them, but actually captured a lot of them, and we actually got a lot of those when we took care of our enemy empire. You get a lot of the ships from the empire that are left over, and it happens to be the case that the fuel tankers try to flee whenever they are overwhelmed, and that basically means when you take out the last colony, you get a ton of fuel tankers for free. Of course, you do need to pay the upkeep for them, but we might as well just drag them around a little bit and make sure that we actually might make them 5. Yeah, why not? Let's make it 5. Anyway, okay, so this is going to be our attack fleet. There we go. So double check. Our attack fleet, therefore, will actually have 26 ships. This is a really large fleet, and it will actually take 14k maintenance. So you can actually see this is a really expensive fleet. It's really expensive maintenance. So it's really interesting information that it's showing right here. Remember, we have $3.5 billion dollars, cash, whatever. Oh, it's just called cash. Okay, cash waiting for us to build stuff, so we could actually build this 10 times. The maintenance is not really a problem either, but just keep this in mind when you're trying to design your fleet. Now, similar, the defense fleets, we are going to do a similar thing. We're going to edit that. Now, we're actually going to make sure these are going to only engage in the same system. We can always change that and overrule that, but 100% greater, yeah, we still want them to be aggressive. and everything else should be fine. Okay, so what are we going to do with these? We're going to make them a little bit more agile, so I think we're just going to get them some frigates, some destroyers, maybe 3 of them. I actually maybe want some troop transports in here as well. And again, let's just have a couple of fuel tankers in here as well. Now these are going to be smaller fleets, but the real reason behind, the real thinking behind these fleets is just keep them small, keep them agile, just make sure your bases don't really get easily overrun. We could actually make use of a little bit more frigates maybe for this. We could actually add in a couple of escorts as well. We have quite a few of those as well. Once again, this is not really going to be an offensive fleet, as the name suggests, just to make sure that our stuff is not being captured. And we can actually use the troop transports in these defense fleets as well, just in case our planets get overrun. Usually what you will see is, if it's a close call, there's just going to be a couple of troops on them, and it's really easy to take planets back if you have some troops to actually do so. Alright, that takes care of the defense fleets. And then we are actually, can we remove this one? Edits. Delete selected. Nope, we can't because we need at least one. Okay, fine. Then we're going to use the raiding force. Let's call it raiding fleet, just to be a little bit more consistent. There we go. And this is really going to be a very small type of attack fleet, basically, but its only goal is to take out small systems that don't have major defenses, but that we can easily take over, hopefully, by doing exactly that. Just fly in, destroy whatever defense they have, and then we should be good to go. I always make my fleets larger than they need to be. That is the thing I do. It always feels like I don't have enough, but yeah, this might be really overkill. Let's see our rating. Actually, I'm just going to edit these and set this to 0 so we are not confused about what this actually is. There we go. Okay, so to be honest, our defense fleets and raiding fleets are sort of the same, but the main difference here is that we should probably add in one more troop transport and remove something like a frigate or something like that. So this way we have a defense fleet that's really aimed at defending, and a raiding fleet that's sort of the same, but it's actually meant to be on the offense. Now what I actually didn't do, yeah, you can actually set this to be fairly offensive, because other than the fact that we can use these to take care of planets when we are kind of idling them, we do want them to kind of fly around and take care of small fleets jumping in. We don't want these to go all over the place. Let's just set it to 33% fuel range. That should be fine. Again, we're going to set these to aggressive. And other than that, I think this is fine for now. Now, okay, so let me make sure everything is in order. Let me check my templates for my ships, and then let's actually see how we use these. Okay, so I did some math, and what I think we should be doing is we want 3 of those raiding forces to take out these smaller planets pretty much as soon as we declare war, just not to give them any opportunity to fortify these and take them out. If we look at these systems, they're actually not all that interesting. This is a relatively undefended planet, only 800 troops here, 200 over here, and something like 300 over here. So this is should be all fairly easy to take over. They're actually smaller colonies, except for this one. This one is a little larger. This one is actually really nice as well. Anyway, this is a larger colony, so really interesting to take over. And on this side, what we want to do is we are going to want to have 2 larger attack fleets. We have the main capital over here, so this is going to be our primary target. If we take this over, if we just take this one over, other than these smaller colonies, we're already happy. But ideally, we want to take out some of the other larger planets as well. Now, this planet over here, not that large, it is a little bit better defended than some of the others. But there's a couple of larger colonies over here, and especially this one over here is really large, has a little bit more defense. So initially what I think we want to do is we want to kind of push to the capital, and then if we take that one over, we should have 1 attack fleet and 1 smaller raiding fleet take over these 2 planets over here, and then the other main attack fleet can basically push through to these larger planets here as well. There's one more large planet over here. That's kind of the ultimate goal. If we can also take over this planet with one of our larger fleets, that would be really awesome. But that would require us to take now like 4 or 5 systems in a row in one war, taking losses along the way, etc. So I'm not entirely sure that it's going to be possible to do that in one war, but in order to do that, we're just going to try and see how far we get. Now, going back to the fleet management, what we can do now is we can say, hey, form a new, let's say, attack fleet. We're going to need 2 of those. Form that from ships existing at, let's say, Tefnil. Now, of course, the actual planet is not called Tefnil. It is called... If I see it, I will know it, I hope. Actually, I don't, because it's only showing me where there's actual... let's say Horizon Spaceport, because that's actually where we want to go, more or less. There we go. So now we have 1 fleet, and it's an attack fleet. We are going to form a second one of that, and let's just form it at the same spaceport. There we go. And as you can see, these are huge fleets, very powerful fleets with a lot of troops in them already. Now we are going to be forming 5 of these. So we're going to say form a new fleet somewhere, let's say at Piro, because that's the smaller space station in the, all the way on the, let's say, east side. We don't need the mining station, we need the spaceports actually. Yeah, there's Piro spaceports, there we go. Then we're going to do that 2 more times. So we have those raiding forces all the way over there. Piro, where are you? Where are you? I'm blind. There we go. As you can see, these are smaller fleets, but that's okay. They don't have as much troops in them as well. That's okay as well. We will get to that in a moment. And then we're going to form 2 more of these at, let's say, horizon once again, just to make sure we'll have them all going to the correct direction. And strike force, yes, that's fine. Okay, now, then we're going to take the defense fleets. We actually don't need that many of them, I think, mainly because we're going to be on the offense so heavily anyway. But I do want maybe 3 of these. Let's say that we make one at horizon. We make one at Uguf, tier 1, there we go. And then we're going to make one at this planet, whatever it's called. So that's to the area. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce that. To be honest, we could just make it at our home planet. Let's make it at the Gurki 4 spaceport. That way we have one sort of over here, and then we have one on the top, and then we have one in the more centered in the middle. But we're probably going to relocate, but at least then we're kind of flexible about that. Now, we have all these things assigned. As you can see, we can see, oh, this is defense fleet, this is a raiding fleet, this is an attack fleet. That's all fine and dandy. The ships are actually going to have a home system like we assigned, so they're going to make sure all those ships are moving in that direction. They might not be in that vicinity just yet. As you can see, they are actually not. And the AI has tried to make sure that the composition of all these fleets is already in line with what we suggested. So let's pick the defense force. There's frigates in here, there's escorts in here, there's troop transports in here, and the fuel tankers. But what we can actually do now is that we can say top up fleets with ships. And now it's actually going to build whatever is not yet in there. Normally, if you have loose ships flying around, it could also actually try to take single ships out of your empire and just put them in these fleets. But right now, this is what it's going to be building those, because if there were the correct ships available, it would already have done so. So we're actually going to cycle through all of these. We're actually not missing anything here. We're not missing anything here either. That's all really well. We are not missing anything here either. Nothing missing here either. We are missing something here. And I think then we're already done. Actually, we're not. We skipped a few. Let's make sure we don't miss anything else. We're not doing all that bad. Alright, now the last thing, if you do something similar like I just did, what you really do want to do is make sure that you then go to your military ships. You select, like I have now, ships not in a fleet, and you kind of go through that to see if that's actually going to be a problem for you. For example, right now we have this troop transport is just flying around and it's not actually doing anything. So what you can do is you can select the ship, then you can just say, hey, join this to a fleet. And then we are going to do that, and we're going to add them to... the defense forces are the actual defense fleets that we had. The strike forces are the smaller raiding fleets, and these are our attack fleets. So let's just move the troop transport into our attack fleet. It's the main attack fleet. What is this? Is a frigate. We can do the same thing here. Let's just add those to the 25th, because these are our larger fleets. And similar, I'm actually going to go through all of these little ships that are not assigned to anything yet and assign them to a fleet, unless they are fuel tankers, because it's actually not that bad to have a couple of random fuel tankers flying around and refueling ships, because they will also try to prioritize things like colony ships, construction ships, etc. if for whatever reason they get stuck without fuel. So let me go and do that. Okay, so as you can see, our fleets are all built. They're actually quite stocked up on troops and things like that. So all in all, we are doing pretty well with our plan, preparing for war. There's also a couple of other things that I did along the way. So I automated a couple of the decisions that the AI is making for us at the moment, because quite honestly, when your empire reaches this size, there's way too much stuff for you to arrange all manually. Well, you could, but if you do that, the game is going to take forever. And it's really one of the things I don't like about games like this and Stellaris, etc. Games that basically give you a huge empire. At some point, the empire can become a chore to actually maintain. And you are the emperor in this case, I suppose. And that's not really what you want to be doing. You have people to manage that stuff for you. So what I actually did is I automated the suggestions for building mines, mining stations, buildings on the planets like the metropolis things, etc. These are things that you want to be building anyway. In general, the AI is pretty good at assigning or suggesting those things. And considering I'm approving like 90% or even more of these suggestions, I might as well just say suggest them anyway, because I do like to actually see that it's suggesting that. But I also like the fact that I don't have to like click all through all of those. I can just kind of keep my eye on this and see what's happening. There's a couple of things that I didn't actually automate. So I didn't automate, for example, the building of fleets. It's still trying to get me to spend over $1 billion on fleets, or 1.2 million actually. That's not $1 billion. Anyway, you get the point. I want to be building my own fleets. I actually also automated the colonization, so the AI is now freely colonizing any planet it sees fit. And as you can see, we're kind of sprawling around over here, claiming some smaller planets, stations, systems, etc. So it's really useful as well. And all those smaller colonies we can handle. I don't recommend automating the colonization early on, mainly because, well, they cost a lot of money and initially you don't have a lot of money. We do now, so we might as well automate it. Now, there's a couple of other things other than waiting for my fleets to get organized, upgraded, etc. that I did in the meanwhile, and I think it's important to note that, just so you know, that's not just about building fleets. In terms of the research, I am actually researching a lot of things like colonization, thanks to a couple of people suggesting it actually in the comments. For the simple reason, this will actually make it easier to colonize, but also improve the quality of your planets as a result of that. So it basically makes it easier for your people to live on planets. So why not? It doesn't actually improve the quality of the planet, but it does improve the limits, or the minimum limits that you need to take into a consideration when you actually want to colonize. So it's kind of an indirect way of improving the quality anyway. If you directly want to improve the quality, that's where the terraforming facility comes in, that we will soon also be able to build, if that is something we want to do. I've also been researching a couple of the more lower tech things that takes like 50 days to complete. I might as well just pick those up. Not necessarily because it's pointful, but I got most of the high priority stuff that I wanted. Now, the high priority stuff is things like these mega labs, or what is this called? The Danula Engineering Center. These are like scientific research wonders that you can build. And taking this one, the Vortigern Energy Complex as an example, you can build exactly one of those, and it will give you a huge boost to reactor shields and hyperdrive research. And similarly, all these other buildings give you similar bonuses. Again, you can only build one of them, but if you build a couple of these buildings, it really gives a huge boost to your research, and that is exactly what I did. Now, the third thing that I want to mention is, we already saw it just a moment ago, the regional governance type of research that gives you access to the administration types of buildings that you can upgrade. These all give huge bonuses to happiness, and reductions to colony corruption, and that in turn will make it a lot easier for your colonies to be productive. So, all of those things that I have been working in the meanwhile on just make sure that we have a stronger population growth, we have more income, and we are able to populate more planets to grow our population even further and get more income. And yeah, and so on. So that's a really productive way to do kind of in the meanwhile while you're rearranging your fleets. Don't neglect your economy because you will need that. Other than that, our most important competitor over here is still expanding. We are going to run into some border issues here pretty soon, so we might as well make sure we take out some of our weaker opponents before we get into a real struggle with this larger one. We are almost caught up though, and they might actually see that as an offense and declare war on us at some point. If they do right now, we have a problem because we don't really have any defenses, or no major defenses, I should say, at this side of the galaxy. Everything is mostly stationed on the other side because this is where we want to do the majority of our warfare. We're going to do that in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this kind of run through the fleet management and how to set up and really use the fleet templates and make your life a little bit easier. And yeah, guys, if you're still here at the end, you're awesome. If you want to be truly legendary, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.